Hello guys, this is Arvind here from Edureka and I welcome you all to this amazing session on DevOps Engineer Day-to-Day Activities. So before we move any further, let us have a quick look at the agenda for today's session. So as you can see on the screen, these are the topics that we'll be covering, starting with who exactly is a DevOps engineer. After that, we will discuss what are the various roles and responsibilities that a DevOps engineer has. Moving on, we will discuss what are the skills required for a DevOps engineer. And finally, we will discuss the main part of the session, that is DevOps engineer daily tasks, or you can say day-to-day activities. So without any further ado, let us begin with our first topic, who is a DevOps engineer. So before that, let's have a quick look at what exactly is DevOps. So DevOps is a software development strategy which bridges the gap between the developers and the IT staff. With DevOps, organizations can release small features and incorporate the feedback which they receive very quickly. If we talk about the benefits of DevOps, the first benefit is that it has fewer software failures compared to the previous traditional software development methods such as waterfall and the agile. And also the lead time between the fixes of issues is significantly reduced in DevOps. DevOps overcomes all the limitations of the traditional waterfall model. DevOps process involves a lot of development, testing, and deployment technologies for developing automated CI/CD pipelines. So this was a quick definition of DevOps. And now if you talk about what are the tools that are used in DevOps. So the first tool that is used in DevOps is for source code management, or you can even say version control systems. And these tools are Git and GitHub. There's one more tool called Jenkins here, which is an automation server and which has built-in plugins for developing the CI/CD pipelines. After that, we have Selenium for automation testing and Docker, which is nothing but a software containerization platform. You must have also heard about the tool called Kubernetes, which is basically the container orchestration platform. And then we have Puppet, Chef, and Ansible, which are basically used for configuration management and deployment. And finally, there is a tool called Nagios, which is used for the purpose of continuous monitoring. So these were some of the tools that are used frequently in DevOps. So now coming back to our previous question, who exactly is a DevOps engineer? So a DevOps engineer is somebody who understands the software development lifecycle and has the outright understanding of various automation tools for developing the CI/CD pipelines. DevOps engineer works with developers and the IT staff to oversee the code releases. So they are either the developers who get interested in the deployment and network operations, or system admins who have passion for scripting and coding and move into the development side where they can improve the planning of test and deployment. So this was an overview of who exactly is a DevOps engineer. So now let us just move on and discuss our next topic here, the roles and responsibilities of a DevOps engineer. So let me first tell you about the roles that are present in DevOps. So the first role in DevOps is that of a DevOps evangelist. So he is someone who's responsible for implementing the overall DevOps lifecycle, right from planning and coding till the monitoring phase. Evangelist is someone who's responsible for implementing the entire DevOps pipeline. So next comes the release manager. Okay. So the release manager is someone who releases new features and ensures post-release product stability. After that, we have automation expert who's responsible for achieving automation and orchestration of tools. And we also have developers and testers who develop and test the code. After that, we have QA guys who are responsible for the quality of the product and they check whether the product is as per the requirements. And finally, we have a security engineer who always monitors the product's health and security. So these were some of the roles that are present in DevOps. And now if you talk about the responsibilities, so some of the key responsibilities of a DevOps engineer are administration of the IT infrastructure, next choosing the right deployment models, and finally conducting the testing protocol and critical monitoring. And also, if you face a question in an interview that what is your responsibility as a DevOps engineer, then you can say that as a DevOps engineer, you're responsible for the build and release process. And you're also responsible for managing the user access on resources. After that, you have also responsibility of managing the various branches of Git. So Git is basically in the continuous development phase, a tool that is used in continuous development phase. After that, you're also responsible for the automation of repetitive tasks. As a DevOps engineer, it is your responsibility to provide the server support and the application support. And finally, you have to ensure that the backup is sufficient. And if there isn't any sufficient backup, then you have to create a backup policy as well. So these were some of the responsibilities that a DevOps engineer has. So now let us just talk about the DevOps skills. Before coming to the actual part of this session, that is the DevOps Engineer Day-to-Day Activities, I think it is very crucial to know what are the skills that are possessed by a DevOps engineer. So the first point here is Linux fundamentals and scripting. So as a DevOps professional, you might have to provision your infrastructure. And therefore, in order to automate this, you should know at least one scripting language. So most of the companies have their environment on Linux, and also many configuration management tools like Puppet, Chef, and Ansible have their master nodes on Linux. So to become a DevOps engineer, you should be aware of the Linux fundamentals, and knowledge of one scripting language is mandatory. So scripting language can be anything. So say for example, Ruby, Python, Perl, and so on. So the next point here is knowledge on various DevOps tools and technologies. So DevOps involves various phases, and there are multiple tools available for these stages. So I think we have discussed this point earlier. So you should have good knowledge on these development, testing, and deployment technologies. The next point here is the continuous integration and continuous delivery. Knowledge on various tools is not enough. You should be in a better position always to where to use these tools. These tools should be used in order to facilitate continuous integration and continuous delivery. Even continuous deployment in few cases, but continuous deployment is not considered as a good practice. So the next point here is infrastructure as a code. So IAC, or infrastructure as a code, is a type of IT infrastructure that operations team can automatically manage and provision through code, rather than using a manual process. IAC is sometimes referred to as programmable infrastructure. With advent of IAC, the line between a developer and a SysOps guy is getting thinner day by day. And the next point here is the DevOps key concepts. So till now we have discussed only the technical skills, but you should also keep in mind that DevOps is not a technology, rather than it is a methodology. So this methodology aims at bringing the dev and the ops part of the organization together to release good quality software in time. So if you understand the key concepts of this methodology, you will be able to better provide solutions to various business problems. And last but not the least, I think be it any profession, the most critical skill that a person must possess is soft skills. So whenever the developers and the operations staff communicate with each other clearly, they not only develop and release the software in time with good quality, but can help in marketing the application with lower costs and better quality. A DevOps professional also sometimes helps in cultivating positive relationships with the businesses and the customers. Those interested in the field need to be able to listen attentively, negotiate, solve problems, and build teams. So these were some of the crucial skills that a DevOps engineer must possess. So now let us discuss the main part of this session, that is DevOps engineer day-to-day tasks or daily activities. So if you think about this question, what are the daily activities or day-to-day activities of a DevOps engineer? So this question is, as per my opinion, it is pretty much vague, because it depends what your experience is as a DevOps engineer, and it also depends upon the organization that you're working for. If you talk about the organization, it really depends on since how long your company has started adopting the DevOps practices. So let me list down a few general points here that a DevOps engineer, no matter what his background is and what his experience is, these are some of the points that normally majority of the DevOps professionals execute, or they do it on a daily basis. So the first point here is making sure that the pipeline is running smoothly. So this is one of the most important tasks of a DevOps engineer, and he needs to make sure that the CI/CD pipeline is intact, and fixing any issue or failure with it is the topmost priority for such person. They often need to spend time on troubleshooting, analyzing, and providing fixes to issues. So the second point here is interaction with other teams. So coordination and collaboration is the key for DevOps to be successful, and hence a daily integration with the DevOps and the QA team, program management, IT, and other stakeholders is always required. The next point here is working on automation backlog. So automation is the soul of DevOps, and so DevOps engineer needs to plan it out, and he spends a lot of time behind the keyboard working on automating stuff on a daily basis. So the next point here is infrastructure management. So DevOps engineers are also responsible for maintaining and managing the infrastructure required for the CI/CD pipeline and making sure that it is up and being executed optimally. So this is also a part of their daily schedule. So say for example, working on a backup and making sure that the systems are always highly available and a new platform setup and so on. So the next point here is dealing with legacy stuff. So not everyone is lucky to work on the latest and the newest things, and DevOps engineers are no exception. Hence, they also need to spend time on legacy, that is in terms of supporting it or migrating it to the latest version. And the next point here is the exploration. So DevOps leverage a lot from the various tools which are available, and there are many options as open source. So the team needs to regularly check on this to make sure that the adoptions are as required. And this is something which also requires some effort, not on a daily basis, but you can say that such activities should be done on a regular basis. The next point here is removing of bottleneck. DevOps' primary purpose is to identify the bottlenecks or the manual handshakes and work with everyone involved, that is the development, QA, and other stakeholders, to remove them so that the team spends a good amount of time in finding such things and build the automation backlog. The next point here is that of a documentation. Okay. So though Agile and DevOps stresses less on the documentation, it is still an important part of his job on which a DevOps engineer works on a daily basis. Be it server information, daily week charted, or a Scrum or Kanban board, or simple steps to configure or modify the infrastructure. So you need to spend a good amount of time in coming up with these artifacts. So the next point here is training and self-development. So self-learning and training is very useful in getting better understanding, and many organizations encourage their employees to take the time out and do some of these, and same holds true for DevOps folks as well. So it is very important to learn something new every day. And last but not the least, continuous improvement as a practice. So it is up to the DevOps folks to build the awareness on the potential of CI/CD and DevOps practices, and building a culture of leveraging it for doing things better, that is reducing the rework and increasing the productivity, and also optimizing the use of existing resources. So you must go and talk to people to build DevOps and continuous improvement culture. So these were some of the activities you can say that a DevOps engineer does very frequently or on a daily basis. So again, now I'll give you a real-time scenario here. Previously, we discussed some general scenarios, and now I'm going to talk about some real scenarios of the day-to-day activities of a DevOps engineer. So the first and foremost task that you do when you go to the office or when you reach your workplace is the daily stand-up meeting. So what happens in this meeting is, normally your team that are involved in the DevOps, like the development, QA, and the operations, all of those teams, they meet together to have a discussion on what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. So say for example, if you're a part of the team and you have a team lead, so your team lead will assign you any specific task for that particular day, and he will also take the feedback of your work at the end of the day. So this is the first and foremost thing that you must do as a first thing in the morning when you go to your workplace. Next, you check your mails and the Jira tickets. So again, Jira tickets are nothing but they tell you through tickets what are your tasks for the day or for the week, entire week. So this is how you use Jira tickets and your emails for knowing what needs to be done. After that, you check the notifications from monitoring systems. So as discussed earlier, there's one tool called Nagios used for continuous monitoring purpose. So what happens is, after you have deployed your application on the production servers, you make use of tools such as Nagios for continuously monitoring its health and security. So if there are any notifications related to that, so it is your responsibility as a DevOps engineer to check those notifications and fix if there are any issues. So you have to fix it and provide solution to that issue. Next, you have to ensure that there is no critical alert unattended. So this point is pretty much an extension to the previous point. So if there are any critical notifications or messages related to your DevOps team or related to your application, so it is your responsibility to make sure that it is not unattended. Maybe you should attend it, or you should try and fix that issue, or If you cannot do that, then you should ask the required person who has the proper skill set for fixing that problem. So you must at least talk to him and get the issue solved as early as possible. Next, as a DevOps engineer, you must provide help and support to the developers. So developers are responsible for developing the code. So developers develop the code as per the requirements of the application. So as a DevOps engineer, it is your responsibility to talk to them to make sure that they are able to write the code elegantly and efficiently. And after that, it is your responsibility to make sure that the developed code is moved to the further stages. That is testing, integration, deployment, and so on. Next, you have to provide support for the production servers. So once the application is deployed on the production servers, it is your responsibility to track the running of the application. So whether it is running smoothly or not, if there are any errors, you have to make sure that the application is running smoothly. So normally what happens is before deploying on the production servers, so the application is developed in the continuous development phase. Okay. It might be possible that the environment in which the application was developed in the development was different than the environment that we have on the production. So because of this mismatch in the environment on production and development, so the application might not run smoothly. So it is your responsibility to check this, that the environment is correct. There are all the dependency issues are solved as far as the application is concerned. The next point here is automation of the admin repetitive tasks. So as a DevOps engineer, you might come across many activities that are repetitive and you have to execute them almost daily. Since you know one scripting language, so it is your responsibility to automate those tasks by writing scripts for that particular task. So if you write scripts for that task, so those tasks will get executed efficiently and you as a DevOps engineer will always be relaxed just because you have automated those things and they are getting executed successfully. So automation, as discussed earlier, is a key component of DevOps. Next, you have to create Jenkins job for deployment. So as discussed earlier, Jenkins is a tool that is used in the continuous integration phase of DevOps. The basic unit of execution in Jenkins is a job. So as a DevOps engineer, you have to execute jobs, you have to integrate the code, and then you prepare a CI/CD pipeline. So basically the CI/CD pipeline is the heart of DevOps. So it is one of the most important concepts. So as a DevOps engineer, you have to make sure that you create jobs and build a CI/CD pipeline using Jenkins. Next, you have to support existing infrastructure and create new servers. So as discussed earlier, you are responsible for maintaining the infrastructure. Okay. So it is your responsibility to check the overall infrastructure of your DevOps to figure out whether it is sufficient or not. If it is not sufficient, talk to the required members or the authorities to make sure that you add additional infrastructure or you expand it. And if need arises, you also can add new servers to your infrastructure and so on. Next, you have to check whether the code has been successfully deployed on the production servers. So I think we have discussed much about this point earlier. And finally, you have to check for the proper approvals before the code releases. So say you have to develop an application with 20 features. I'm just giving you an example here, just for your understanding. So what will happen is you will not directly develop an application with 20 features. So first you will develop an application. So say for example, with 5 features and you will release that application. And then based on the performance of that application with 5 features, you gather the feedback of that application. So whether that application is running well, whether users are liking it or not, how the features are. So you gather this feedback, and if there are any major changes, you try to incorporate those changes in the application. And then you again release the application with few more features. So for example, in the first version, there were 5 features. Now you have 10 features plus the feedback of the first 5 features as well. So this is the second iteration or the second version of the application. So normally this is how your application is launched or it is deployed on the production servers version by version, or you can say even the iterations. So then you again really gather the feedback of the application based on 10 features, and then you try to incorporate those changes in the application and you release it again for the next time with, say for example, 15 features. I hope you guys are understanding what I'm trying to say here. Multiple versions with different features and the feedback. So this is one of the most important thing that increases the quality of the software in DevOps. So these were some of the points, or you can say the activities that a DevOps engineer does on a daily basis. So with this, we have come to the end of this session here on DevOps Engineer Day-to-Day Activities. I hope you guys have enjoyed this session. If you have any queries related to this session, then you can write your queries in the comment box below, and my team is here to help you with all your doubts. So thank you guys for being with us, and all the best.